Apart from that, so the countries that are left are Japan, that are prominent now, are Japan, the United States, up to a certain level, Germany, also the UK, France, and Russia. Now, the thing I noticed in that was that those are mostly the five permanent members of the UN Security Council in the real world, except for Germany. Keel Lawrence represents Germany, but Germany isn't a permanent member of the Security Council. They replaced China. And, well, is China present in the Evaverse? Yes, they are. They various times they mention China. They don't mention them as, like, having an actual branch base, like, but near the end of the series when Hugo's saying, oh, I heard from a contact in Shanghai that they're going to be building mass production Eva units. But the really big hint we get at who's left is when, in End of Eva, they're getting attacked by all the other Magi units around the world, and logically they would use all the ones they had, so these must be the five other ones they have. There shouldn't be a sixth one. And they have one other nerve branch bases in Matsushiro. We saw that that's a secondary testing base where they made Eva 3. They have one in the U.S., Massachusetts, where they built Eva 3, the test in Matsushiro, and there was another branch base in Area 51 that's been destroyed. And there's apparently two branch bases in Germany, one in Berlin and one in Hamburg. And they keep saying, oh, Asuka's from Nerve Base 3. And I'm never able to tell, like, was she from Berlin or was she from Hamburg? But she was from one or the other, where she was in their base where they were building Eva 2. Notice they also say there is a prominent Nerve base in Beijing. And they never say, is it a full base or not? But they say the mass production Evas were built in 7 locations around the world. And like China built Unit 8, 5 and 6 were built by Germany. So, some might have doubled up, but so it's those 5 countries, and China is doing fairly well. But to the point that when the Japanese Prime Minister is being asked, hey, should we rebuild Nerve headquarters, the options are we could rebuild it in Germany or we could rebuild it in China. Maybe they could have rebuilt it in the U.S. if it weren't for the fact that Area 51 blew up. So maybe that's why they don't mention the U.S. as a viable option. But apart from that, also, like, what are other parts of the world like? Antarctica is completely gone. Even microbial life has been wiped away because Adam made an anti-AT field. Not that many people live there, of course. But, yeah, so the world is... The southern hemisphere just isn't there anymore, though. I mean, India and Pakistan are just gone. They got hit by the brunt of second impact of the giant mega tsunamis because they're on the Southern Ocean. They face it. And on top of that, they got into a war over refugees like a matter of days after second impact happened. I don't know if it went nuclear. This was made in 1995. They didn't know Pakistan and India didn't have nukes back then. Now they do, but I think it was a nuclear war. They don't even mention India, even though it's one of the biggest economies in the world now. But India and Pakistan just aren't there anymore. The subcontinent got wiped out by second impact. They weren't one of the lucky ones. But this other thing they mentioned just pervasively throughout the series is, okay, the problem I have is I think it's a commentary on how, like, Japan didn't recover from World War II and everything was sunshine and lollipops and rainbows everywhere. I think whenever there's a disaster, you fix up just enough so that the top people are doing well again, and the bottom people don't really do that well. Like Katrina, it was weird how we really didn't fix up things after Katrina, that 2 years later they're saying people are still living in trailers and stuff. It's just the cameramen and the news crews went away, but there was never a major reconstruction effort. We're still just refugees down here, and they just decided it wasn't news anymore. That, there's still problems in the world. Like when Japan rebuilt from World War II, I think the problem is there were still lots of student protests in the 60s and things saying, no, we still have social problems and work problems and things. And you haven't just made this great utopian society again. So I don't live in Japan, I don't know this, but I think it's a play on that at first you think, wow, they amazingly rebuilt and it's utopia like Akira. They go, no, like the people on the bottom actually are still having a lot of problems. And the first world just fixed itself. Like in episode 7, they mention that 20,000 people in multiple countries are starving because they spend money on the Evangelion project. That there's still refugee crisis problems all over the place in the damaged parts. Japan's one of the reconstructed zones. One of the other areas that are still having problems, they just like to say, And children, when they're in school, children, your mothers and fathers worked hard and we managed to rebuild the world. And it's kind of propaganda because they didn't fix everything. Just like when they rebuilt World War II, it wasn't like Utopia. So they're still starving people outside of Japan. There's an Evangelion project. And one of the big things in Navy you have to remember is they give hints of information in barely audible TV broadcasts that are like playing off screen. That like you could not hear these unless you turn the volume at the point that the regular dialogue is deafening. And you know them from the script, or the 5.1 audio wasn't even dubbed. This line here was dubbed, but like in episode 14, there's a news broadcast that says there was a terrorist attack in the Nansha Islands. Even in 2015, that there's still wars and things going on off in the third world, off away from the first world countries that managed to pool their resources and rebuild themselves. But the problem is, it's like if you were living in the suburbs in Japan after Reconstruction was allegedly over, you'd think everything was fine, not for the working class people. Or America, we go, oh, we're great, we recovered from 9/11 or something. And really, no, there's all sorts of crappy problems going on in the world. But like Pakistan is falling apart these days, or Iraq or something. The problem is, we live in a society where we can turn the TV off. These are events on the news to us, and like Israelis can't turn the TV off. India, again with the Pakistan problems, they can't turn the TV off and make problems go away. There's social unrest in their streets. But America's got this mentality of these are amusing television stories we can turn off if we don't like paying attention to them. And I don't know if this is a commentary on it, but it really fits this for me. That why don't they focus on all these other... There's still problems going on in the world politically. Why don't they talk about them? And it's because they live in a culture that can turn the TV off. It's as simple as that. It's playing in the background, the characters aren't focusing on it, because on a day-to-day basis, does a yaoi fangirl in America really get affected by what's going on in Iraq or something? She doesn't. To the common kid on the street, it really doesn't affect them what's happening in the third world and all the wars and stuff. So they don't worry about it, because there's not fighting in the streets here. So it's all in the background. It's not important. It's not what the story's about. The thing is, Evangelion isn't Gundam. This isn't like Operation Adesta or Operation British. This isn't a political show. So, these guys were giant Gundam fans. They said we loved Gundam. So, I don't know if they stuck these in as little things for other fanboys like themselves, if you really wanted to find it. Like, what is the political situation after such a disaster? That's very interesting. They just don't really focus on it, because it's not what the show is about. And it's happening off in the background, but they aren't focusing on it, because that's not the story. Sort of like, bad example, Star Wars, you could say, is a giant intergalactic civil war between the Empire and the Rebels. But really what the real story was about was the throne room scene between Luke and the Emperor, and a personal fight on that level. And the galaxy hung in the balance, and Luke did care about the Rebels, so that's not really the same problem. But it's just that these political things, and like, why are there aliens attacking? They explain that in supplementary stuff. I'll explain in another video about angels. It's not important to what the story was about the characters.